Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen superpowered deterrence, Herculean feats of strength, and the Great American Kaiju novel. But we're going to kick things off this week with Absolute Wonder Woman #1, written by Kelly Thompson with artwork by Hayden Sherman. Pride and perseverance is what comes to mind first and foremost when I think about this issue. Pride and perseverance in the way that Diana is shown and how her upbringing has changed and how she chooses to be the superhero that she needs to be regardless of the upbringing, regardless of the circumstances of her life, and how she got to this new place in this absolute universe as opposed to the Diana that we know. Pride and perseverance. You can't stop a good person from being that good person, and that shows through and through. I love how Kelly Thompson is showing these things, and again, it's showing, not telling. We learn these things from Diana all throughout her upbringing, as these circumstances have evolved and grown and changed as opposed to what we're used to. Hayden Sherman has also done a really fantastic job of showing this detail artistically. I love how their style, like it's almost like a chameleon. It changes, it grows, it does evolve, and you see growth as an artist from Hayden from his time doing things like Thumbs and The Few and Wasted Space to this. Totally different stylistically, but it's like they adapt and change depending on what the story needs from them. I love that approach. I love the artistic style in this book in particular. All in all, the Absolute Universe is really rolling out to be something that seems to be pretty darn fantastic. I love the change as opposed to DC proper, and this issue really brings that to the forefront. Staying at DC, let's talk Action Comics 1072, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Clayton Henry. This is just classic Waid, telling classic stories in a classic way that doesn't feel dated or, I don't know, dusty. It feels good. It feels right. It feels of its time right now. And he just loves pulling from these classic storylines and making them modern and making them feel fresh. This is no different. I love that also Clayton Henry paired with Mark Waid gives this a classic feel. It feels classic comic booky without, again, feeling dated. This all revolves around Superman as he is now in the Phantom Zone, and he's starting to realize some of the differences that have happened from his last, views into the Phantom Zone and how things have changed and how people can really manifest and become tangible now as opposed to what his, previous thoughts were. He meets up with some, again, classic characters with Mon-El, and we start to learn kind of why the Phantom Zone is changing and what's happening and why Superman really needs to be a part of this, granted a limited time, because without exposure to Earth's yellow sun, Superman will eventually become depowered. Again, this feels like a classic story. I love what Mark Waid is doing here. He does hits on all cylinders. You never get a bad book with Mark Waid, and this continues to be the case here with Action Comics. So, all in all, I gotta say, I was super pleased. Next up, let's talk Conan the Barbarian #16, written by Jim Zub with artwork by Doug Braithwaite. So this puts a bow on the part of Conan's story where he's really questioning God and questioning the things that he's been taught and the things that are intangible and the things that are tangible. Jim Zub has done a really great job adapting this story that we've kind of been told a couple different times, and I feel like he's truly made it his own. I really like how they, kind of bring this forward and kind of tell a story that really is going to be leading Conan into a new age with him kind of, I don't know, learning the lessons that he was stubbornly not learning as a child. And it's a right story to tell and it's a right lesson to learn, especially knowing that his father struggled with the same questions about Crom himself, as an older man. I love the way that Jim played with the back and forth on that in the flashback as we kind of learn that, Conan is becoming an adult. He's growing and he's thinking for himself beyond just the notion of, accepting what he's told. On top of that, Doug Braithwaite, his artwork is just stunning. It is so good, especially for this part of the storyline. In particularly, I love the way that he renders young Conan, that sullen look on his face, and that look of basically distrust when he looks upon his father, because he knows in his heart as a child that Crom cannot exist because he can't put hands on Crom himself. Really great stuff here. Really good end cap to this part of, again, Conan's story. And I love how this opens up the doors to the mysteries, to the magic that is the Hyborian Age, as Conan is going to continue to travel down this road. All right, let's talk Detective Comics 1090, written by Tom Taylor with artwork by mycollection. So this is the new creative team taking over Detective Comics, and what you knew about Batman is all thrown away. Everything changes with this issue. Yes, I'm kind of sick of that trope as well, but it plays somewhat decent here. I really like Tom Taylor's storytelling mechanisms. I think that he can tell a compelling, enriching story, and I want to give this a little bit more runway than one issue to really make a determination on it. This feels very Hush Part 2 to me. It feels very much in that same vein, as we're introduced to new characters from Bruce's past that have never shown up previously, and there's definitely machinations that are happening between their upbringing and Bruce's, and how they're going to come to, to heads because of that. We've been told these things before, but again, I need to give it more time to give it a little bit of chance to make some kind of difference than what we've already been told previously. Now, what I can say is the artwork on this is really great. I love that the cinematic feel that he brings to every single panel that's drawn on here, and the color choices definitely complement the artwork through and through. So overall, Detective Comics isn't necessarily something new, but it could get more exciting given a little bit more time. Next up, let's talk Godzilla, Monsterpiece Theater #1, written and drawn by Tom Scioli. If the Eisners were to give out an award for the most niche book of all of the year, this book would absolutely fit the bill. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would get a combination of The Great Gatsby and Godzilla, but lo and behold, we're here. Tom Scioli really crafts this with a sense of earnesty, though. He really takes both properties to heart, and he doesn't really kind of like poke fun at either one of them. And it really is kind of a true telling of maybe how these things would play out given the two properties, the F. Scott Fitzgerald novel and the kaiju that we all know and love. Can I say that this was, this thing blew my mind? No, not necessarily, but it was so different than most things that we get from modern comics that you have to give it a read at least to see what the heck is going on, because again, who in their wildest dreams would have thought of this combination? Definitely not me. So all in all, it was an interesting book, but it's definitely not going to appeal to every single reader. Okay, let's talk Grommets #5, written by Rick Remender and Brian Posehn, with artwork by Brett Parsons. So I'm going to start with the artwork here because Brett Parsons is somewhat known for his cartoony approach on art, but I have to say, this issue was really brutal and really violent, as it really focuses on the party that's taking place with our two main characters, as they've invited some people over, and that party grows, and that party grows to the point where there are some unsavory people that are there now, and there are fights that ensue, much akin to what really happens in high school types of parties, especially in the 80s. I love that they don't lean away from the brutality, though, because I think that if you're of a certain age group and you've lived through a high school party, you probably experienced something pretty darn similar to this. And that's the great thing about this whole series, is that every issue delivers something that really feels like it was real life and something that has been lived and experienced. And you can go, yeah, I remember that party back at Scotty's place, or I remember that, that thing that happened over here, the hush hush stories that everyone tells about. These are the things that we're seeing through our characters' eyes. So I really appreciate that. This issue did feel a little bit brisk, though, as we didn't get a lot of character development. It feels like there could have been something more to see our characters take action on this, but really the action was being taken against them wholeheartedly. So I'm excited to see what the next issue brings on this. But again, this was a brisk read. We didn't get a lot, but what we did get was definitely different than what we've experienced with the fun levity that we've gotten in the previous issues. All right, back with a new number one. Let's talk Iron Man number one, written by Spencer Ackerman with artwork by Julius Ota. So we kind of pick back up with the introduction that I feel like we get with Tony every single time, which is Tony's down on his luck. He just gets his company back. Something happens to where the company is taken away, and he's got to build a new suit because a new suit is going to solve all his problems. This is rinse and repeat, kind of the same stuff. I'm a little bit, I don't know, excited over the notion of a new writer, a not a seasoned writer, but a writer that's had exposure in the journalism realm, writing about war and writing about, some of the civil unrest that have happened in other countries. I kind of like that we may get some differences in what we've seen just from comic book writers from a different perspective. But this issue definitely felt like it was cookie cutter. Let's reintroduce you to Tony. Let's deliver a story that we've gotten over and over, and then maybe we build out from there. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one to grade here because as a single issue, this did nothing to really excite me. It did nothing to get its hooks in me because we've seen it so many other different times. But again, I'm excited to see that maybe there'll be some new notions that are being brought forward. Time will tell on that. To grade this as a single issue, it was kind of middle of the road here, but we'll have to give it a little bit more runway. Next up, let's talk John Constantine Hellblazer, Dead in America, number 10, written by Simon Spurrier with artwork by Aaron Campbell. What I really take away from this issue is that escape is inevitable. John has been trying to work out his machinations and make sure that he can get this dust back, and he's been doing so at the behest of some of his, his companions. He's been doing so behind the backs of all these individuals, and John, in pure John style, has always been kind of working everyone just in the way that he wants them to. But the lesson he learns here is that the story always wins. This is another fantastic issue. I love Simon's approach to his writing. It can be very verbose, but I feel like it's verbose with a purpose. He does fun things here. He's a British guy, so maybe I'll say cheeky things here. That he plays with the notion of what's happening in the issue as we get a recap, which is actually a really refreshing thing because I feel like we needed kind of to set the base of where all our players were again, but he does so through part of the story itself and through the things that are happening within the story and the characters themselves. I like how he plays with that. It's really inventive, really clever stuff. All in all, we have some new revelations that come into play. We're kind of setting the stage for the end game of this series, which equal parts make me sad, but also it's really developing into a story that I think is going to be heralded as one of the best John Constantine stories to date. So I'm really excited by that notion. John Constantine Hellblazer, Dead in America number 10 was a very worthwhile issue. Being that DC is all in, let's go ahead and be all in as well. Let's talk Nightwing number 119, written by Dan Watters with artwork by Dexter Soy. Nightwing was charming and it was fun, which are things that I wouldn't necessarily associate with Dan Watters books, as I feel like Dan Watters is a real thinky kind of writer. He dives into an idea and he really kind of unravels those ideas and makes you really kind of get intimate with all of the things that he's trying to display for you. And this is more in line with a comic book, which isn't a bad thing, just an unexpected thing. Now, he does get to deliver some kind of gritty notions and he plays with those kind of things and he's not afraid to delve into the darkness that I think that Nightwing actually does truly need, seeing that Bloodhaven was always kind of meant to be a darker place than Gotham. It was kind of like the ghetto of Gotham, basically. And Nightwing was always supposed to be a grittier street level hero. I love when they play with ideas like that. And it feels like Dan is definitely leaning in that direction. Dexter Soy's artwork, pretty good here. Not great, pretty good though. I feel like it was played real fast and loose in some parts, and there were parts where like things like backgrounds were completely missing, and it wasn't for artistic choice so much as it felt like it was just a rushed panel because we needed to churn out the pages and get this book delivered. So all in all, the writing was unexpectedly good for different reasons, because I expect high marks from Dan Waters. Artwork kind of let that down a little bit. So overall, this was kind of a fun reintroduction to Nightwing after kind of the renowned run of Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. But overall, I don't feel like it hit on all cylinders. All right, let's talk Nullhunter number one, written by Michael Walsh with artwork by Gustavo Vargas. So, Nullhunter is a brand new series that's been developed here by Michael Walsh, and it's a retelling of Hercules' 12 tasks that he does, but done so in a cyberpunk futuristic realm. And I got to say, it's really cool. I was kind of blown away by issue number one. Michael Walsh, we've kind of seen him as a writer in bits and pieces as he kind of like put an end cap to every story arc that happened in Silver Coin. But I'm really excited to see him take on a mini series and be able to tell these things. And I got to say, the fact that we have not gotten the 12 feats of Hercules in a 12 issue series is kind of mind blowing. I can't believe that people haven't figured that out. And maybe they haven't, I've totally missed it. Who knows? Michael Walsh does a really good job of kind of jumping into this world and giving us enough hints to show us the Greek mythology behind it without beating us over the head with it. Also, he kind of gets the story rolling right away. As if you know much about Greek mythology, you don't need an introduction to this stuff. It's better to dive in head first and just kind of live in that world and see where we're going to be going. He does that, and he does so very well. Now, when I saw that Michael Walsh was not also going to be drawing this, I was a little bit disheartened, but in opening the pages, I was really enlightened to see that the artwork was still very much in vein of Michael Walsh, albeit a little bit different. Very, very good, though. I love the way that Gustavo is working with the technology of this world, particularly the biomechanics that become part of our Hercules stand-in character as he's kind of put back together to be put on his mission to go do the things he needs to do. Really cool ways that you see the armor or the pieces of his body really develop and how he uses those as the story progresses here. So really great introduction to this world, really great way of developing the Greek mythology in this futuristic world, and just a really great storytelling mechanism. Overall, Nullhunter really blew me away. And with our next issue, let's talk The Power Fantasy number 3, written by Kieran Gillen with artwork by Casper Wingard. This was a very character driven issue as we get to spend almost the entirety of it with the character of Valentina, the superhero, the Superman kind of stand in that's all powerful within this world. And we see kind of her life from birth all the way through modern day. And what this really does is lets us live within her head and hear her thoughts and see the world through her eyes as time has progressed, as it starts very early on and kind of works its way through the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on and so forth. And what this issue really does a good job of is showing how different this can be from the super powered books that we get from the big two, Marvel and DC. Whereas these characters are all powerful and can do so many different things as opposed to saving dogs and cats out of trees. This shows the real true ramifications of what would happen in a world with super powered beings. Kieran Gillen does that stupendously in this issue as we really see the ramifications of the history of this new world that has been lived in and inhabited and affected by superpowered beings. Not to give any spoilers away, big things happen here. Big things have happened in the past, and we get that in full display as we see some of the things that have gone astray in world history events that maybe we weren't expecting. So, all in all, Power Fantasy is a slow burn, but it's giving you really worthwhile things while you sit there and read it and enjoy it. So, if you're along for the ride, just prepare yourself. It's going to take time, but sit with it, enjoy it, love it. I think it's worthwhile. Next up, let's talk Rook Exodus number 6, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Jason Fabok. So this is the end cap to our first story arc within the Rook universe, and I gotta say, I expected excitement, action, bombastic things, and they deliver on every single one of those notions. This is an action-packed issue from start to finish as we really get to see Rook kind of develop into a heroic character and, shed away the, kind of the, I don't know, fight or flight aspects of his character and really take the fight back to Ursaw. And things come to a front and it's awesome. The artwork is stupendous. It's so, I don't know, it's just so nice seeing Jason Fabak do these kind of stories outside of the big two and still keep things very action packed in a way that you would expect from some of the best big two books. Jeff Johns has crafted a really fun story here, and he's kind of still developing all of these universes, which is like crazy to think about. But this is just another one of the effective universes that are being delivered within the Ghost Machine, umbrella. And again, it's totally worthwhile. I never expected to, really enjoy this at the scope that I do, but I got to say, Ghost Machine is delivering. This was awesome. I can't wait to see Rook more and more we are going to be getting new stories from them in 2025. Okay, with our next issue, let's talk Standstill number 3, written by Lee Lowridge with artwork by Andrew Robinson. So again, we have a super indulgent issue with artwork that is just on display full and foremost. And I got to say, normally that would be a hindrance to this book, but it's kind of also the point of this book. The narrative and the story are almost secondary as we're dealt, characters who truly, very truly have MacGuffins. And I think they know that they're dealing with MacGuffins. But again, the story is secondary. The artwork that's being put on display is top notch. I love Lee Lowridge's coloring, but Andrew Robinson's artwork, we don't get it enough. So when we get it, really take some time and, it's a feast for the eyes. Take a look at it because it is awesome. The story again revolves around this character who has the ability to stop time at a moment's notice. And, you kind of get notions like he's doing good things, but he feels like, kind of a slimy character, a charming yet slimy character. Well, this issue goes full on brutal as we see the character definitely dives full on into villainous aspects. Again, doing things is wrong things for the right things for the wrong reason. I don't know. The waters are very muddied here, but you can definitely see that there's villainous aspects to him more so than we've even gotten previously. Again, it's not about the story though. The MacGuffin's in place. There are protagonists that are bound to take him out or at least come head to head with him. As for right now, this was all about the artwork and the brutality of that artwork. And if that's what you're looking for, pick up this issue because it's on full display. All right, let's talk Tin Can Society number 2, written by Peter Warren with artwork by Francesco Mobili. This issue was excellently paced as we get to spend some time in the past with our main players, time in the present day as they're investigating the murder mystery that's unraveled here, and we start to see more and more of the relationships that were had with the victim of this heinous murder and the friend circle that's all been developed here. And we see how some of those friendships have frayed over the years and how they've grown so drastically apart, but how when they're brought back together, they fall into those same archetypes. It's really cool seeing the way that Peter Warren is playing with those things and kind of keeping these characters so true to what we think that they are and keeping it feeling so natural. Francesco Mobili's artwork here fits the bill perfectly. I feel like he's telling the story. Again, the pacing is partially on him too, and they're pitch perfect together here. They're really telling the story and unraveling some of the mysteries and doling out new parts of that mystery at each page turn. And I love how they're doing so. Really great stuff that they're doing here. Really surprising book here. Totally worthwhile as well. So Tin Can Society continues to be probably one of the best character-driven character development books that are on stands right now. Next up, let's talk Universal Monsters Frankenstein number 3, written and drawn by Michael Walsh. Man, so this story all revolves around the character of Elizabeth, the fiance to Henry the scientist. And I gotta say, I love how the warmth and charm and kindness of the character of Elizabeth is juxtaposed so beautifully by Henry Frankenstein, the scientist, the creator of the monster. It tells the story about how a person can actually fall in love with a character such as this, who's so, I don't know, self-motivated and like only sees himself and is so fully focused on his objective as opposed to seeing anyone outside of the scope of his own tunnel vision. It's just beautiful. With the sparseness of the dialogue and the narrative in this, I still love how Michael Walsh can progress the story in such a fantastic way. You can tell, especially because he is both the writer and artist of this, he has full control of this story, and he's doing so in a really fantastic way. He's melding those two things together in ways where he doesn't have to tell you the words as so much as the panel is delivering the story that needs to be told. Universal Monster continues to dance between the raindrops of what they can do with the movie and the new story that they can tell that still kind of works between the film frames of this, and Michael Walsh is doing it in a very stunning manner. And with our runner-up of the week, let's talk Zatanna Bring Down the House number 5, written by Mariko Tamaki with artwork by Javier Rodriguez. Javier Rodriguez, just like every other issue of this series, his artwork has been on full display, and it's been so fun to watch each and every issue. As you can see, the fun that Javier is having with each of these things. It's his artwork on full display, and it is just like no holds barred. He just puts out so many fun things in this issue, and you can tell because when you're dealing with magic, there's so many things that you can put into this book that you just couldn't put anywhere else. If you would have told me that I'd be reading a comic where one of the weapons that are used against an enemy is a hailstorm of rabbits, wouldn't have believed it. But yet again, here it is. Story is also perfectly paced by Mariko Tamaki, as this is the end cap of our story, and we get to spend enough time with the final battle, the protagonist, the antagonist finally coming to head, but also kind of like the epilogue, the relief from the end of the story. Where are our heroes now? How have they changed? What's happening? And how is this going to progress from here on out? It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful end cap. And just like in pure DC fashion, this is definitely going to be an evergreen story. When people say, well, where should I start with Zatanna? This should be possibly, if not definitely, the number one recommendation for that. So Zatanna Bring Down the House was an awesome book this week. And with our top comic of the week, let's talk The Moon is Following Us, number 2. Written by Daniel Warren Johnson with artwork by Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossmo. So we'll start with that artistic duo first and foremost, as we get to see two really great artists on display within this issue. And it's not just, little bits and pieces here and there. They both get time to shine, and the way that they work between those things when the artistic change happens is handled so beautifully, as we get to work within the real world and the dream world, and we get to see not only that, but like how the characters work within those two things, how they travel between those two areas, and to see the artistic change happen at that time, man, it was awesome. Daniel Warren Johnson, the writer, again, is doing the things that we would expect him to do on his independent work. He's pulling on heartstrings. Right now, he's definitely dealing with the kind of the fears that you have as a parent, as all you want is the best for your child, and all you want is for them to be healthy and to grow. And when any of those things are taken away from you, you will do everything in your power to make sure that you get that back. In this issue, it's put on full display, as even when the most illogical becomes the only solution, well, the illogical becomes logical, as our parent characters are met by one of the dream machinations of their daughter, and they're kind of laid out the premise of how they can save their daughter. It takes no time getting to the point of this book, delivering it in an effective way, but a way that also, again, hits home, pulls on the heartstrings, and gets you into the story so that you're not wasting too much time either. It's just awesome. It's a great book. I love each and every page turn. I love issue number 2. I can't wait to see how this series continues to progress, because, again, it is hitting every single thing that I loved about every previous work of Daniel Warren Johnson. So, The Moon is Following Us, number 2, is totally worthwhile for the top comic of the week. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read, and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.